Okay, so this is basically the screen that I'll be showcasing today, all the things as well as the demo later on. Okay, like I mentioned just now, there are a few things that I thought is good to take note of from the beginning when you want to start going into ink sketching. I think one is the paper media, which I mentioned just now. There are so many types of paper on the market. You know, a lot of questions also asked in the conversation previously in the post saying that what type of paper should we use? I'm going to go a bit into it. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the different type of pen medias. Okay, for me right nowadays, I predominantly use fountain pens with permanent ink. I think in the longer run, it makes more sense at some point to use this option. Because basically the cost is much lower in the longer run. And you can maintain many pens of different preference that you have, whether it's brand, the nib size, and things like that. And then lastly, which is what I'm going to cover about, is the portability of your tools. Okay, if you are sketching at home in the comfort of our home, everything is within reach, that's fine. But when you are out sketching with, let's say, the Urban Sketching Group or the Singapore Sketchers people on a sketch outing, what are some of the things you probably want to take along during the trip itself? Okay, but don't get intimidated by all these things, because sketching is a fun thing. Sketching is something that is easy to start with. In fact, I think pencil and pen is probably the easiest to go into compared to the other color medias like watercolor or gouache or even oil painting. Yeah. So without ado, let me just plunge straight into the topics. I'm just going to show a little bit of my tools that I usually carry around with me. Okay, this folio I carry around a lot with me. So it's basically a folio that is a zip. You know, there's a lot of brand online. This particular one is by Gallon Leathers. Has a lot of pen slots where you can keep all your pens, and then you can put a A5 sketchbook on the other side and then zip it up. Good to carry around. So I'm just going to showcase a little bit about what I have inside my case here. Okay, typically I carry at least two types of okay, myself, my preference is I have a habit of drawing very detailed features inside my sketches. So I tend to carry two extra fine nibs fountain pens. And I also carry an interesting fountain pen which has a brush nib. Later I'm going to show you in clearer. I like clutch pencil a lot. Some people prefer mechanical pencil, but it's all boils down to preference. I was introduced not long ago to soluble graphite pencils. This is something very interesting to me that I really like a lot, and it helps a lot in my sketching as well. I'm going to elaborate later. And something that can save a lot of us is a white highlighter pen. Okay, if some people don't like highlighter pen, my suggestion is perhaps at least get a white color pencil. So the one I use is a chalk-based color pencil, because chalk-based one, right? If next time you need to use watercolor over it, it can still wash over through properly. If you use a wax-based or oil-based color pencil, then you will have problem getting the white color pencil to blend in with your color. So just a little bit of take note. Okay, I'm just going to talk very briefly about all the different type of pen. Okay, when I first started off, I didn't invest in Mont Blanc or some of the very expensive fountain pens. I actually started with ordering very cheap China-made fountain pens. Okay, to be very frank, I'm pretty impressed with what the Chinese have done with fountain pens. Basically, like the same point in extra fine nib. Can't zoom in properly. Okay, this is an extra fine nib. An extra fine nib in a China fountain pen, right, is even thinner than a Japanese extra fine nib. Okay, whereas, okay, I'll give you an equivalent. the Chinese fountain pen nibs at EF, right, extra fine nib, they are about 0.38 mm lines. Okay, the Germans, right, their extra fine nib is about a 0.7 or 0.5 at best mm. Okay, so you can imagine the fine nib of the China one is able to reach a 0.5 to 0.6, whereas the Germans or some of the Japanese brand actually will have thicker lines itself. So for those who like a lot of details, perhaps you may want to try some of the Chinese made fountain pens. They are very cheap, probably cost you like $10 each, against what you're paying like more than $100 for some of the famous Japanese brand or the German brands itself. Yeah, of course, Mont Blanc is the other extreme, whereby you probably want to own one more for collection rather than for usage. So like for my case, I sketch a lot. Typically at this price point, right, you cannot expect it to last as long as your expensive fountain pens like Mont Blanc and some of the other pens. But like for me, right, I can run out. I can basically abuse it so much until they literally cannot work anymore after 2 or 3 months. That's like every day doing a lot of sketching and writing using these fountain pens. So it depends on our preference. For start, I will encourage maybe to try this first. Get your style, get your pen strokes mature, and then you start thinking about the next upgrade, so that you don't burn a hole, or in case your interest didn't follow through, and then you decided to switch to another media, then you don't waste your money buying a white elephant and put at home. Okay. The other innovation I want to talk about is actually the Chinese are pretty interesting. They came out with brush nib pens. Okay, essentially this is a fountain pen. Okay, you can fill in fountain pen ink behind, but instead of a sharp nib, it's actually a brush in front. Okay, the brush is usually I think it's a nylon or plastic kind of brush. So basically you can use it as if like it's a brush, and then you can refill ink along the way as well. Okay, I also have something I want to show, which I think I really cheer this technology. This is by Monvet. It's a US brand. They recently basically merged the ballpoint pen with fountain pen together in the same pen. So if you see here, this pen has a ball pen nib, but inside actually is a fountain pen. So you can actually load this pen like as if it's a fountain pen, but then the front tip writes as if it is a 0.5 ballpoint pen itself. Very good innovation. It costs about $130, but I think it's a worthy investment to put it in. So anybody interested can text me. I can give you the link or the name of this pen, and then maybe you want to try getting it. The China manufacturers have not got on to making some of this yet. So this is something that I think is very useful. Yeah. Okay. For those who don't want to use fountain pen, there are a few. One of my favorite is actually this particular Pilot V5 pen. It's a 0.5 mm. It's a good, so even if you misplace it, you lost it, you don't feel really bad. It costs you probably more than slightly above $1 or something. Yeah. And the other favorite pen that I have is actually the Pilot Vtec G1. Okay. The G1 itself has got a nib of 0.38 mm. So this suits the style that I often draw. Okay, when you are using so-called a disposable pen like this, whether it's from Sakura, Pilot, or Omni or Zip or whoever that is producing it, they come in various forms of tips. Some are metal tips, some are fibrous tips, but depending on our preference. Yeah, okay. They range from as low as 0.01 mm all the way to 2 mm nibs. So you can choose whatever fits you well. So a rule of thumb when you use the different nibs is depending on how big is your paper or how fine the details you want to go into. Okay, so this is personal preference. So if you're drawing on an A5 one, right, I would recommend starting with a 0.38 mm or 0.5 mm. Because if your nips are too big, you probably has to do very sketchy kind of sketch, whereby you have to sacrifice a lot of details. But if you're the type that likes to put in a lot of details, fine line drawings, right, then I'll recommend a finer tip itself. Okay, so this one. Okay, next I'm going to talk about paper medium. Okay, when I first started sketching many years ago, I didn't really buy really specific paper to start with. I actually started with newspaper. So what I did last time was I actually took a pilot V point. You know what I do for the first few weeks, right? I just keep drawing lines. I draw lines, straight lines. You know, I do short one first. Do it until you are able to get all the consistent, you know, lines straight. Okay. When you note, there's two fulcrum point that you should use when you're drawing lines. Or typically, one is your elbow. This becomes like a fulcrum to help you draw lines. And when you're drawing longer lines, right, your elbow is actually your best fulcrum itself. So for short lines, right, I usually will use my elbow. But if I need to draw big lines, I typically use my elbow itself. Okay, so I practice this like for 1 week every day, doing nothing. I just take paper out and draw lines. You know, maintain the consistency and try to keep your lines as parallel as possible. Okay, first week is straight lines. Second week, I started drawing curves. Okay, you can start drawing with small arcs, and then get your strokes, get the confidence in your strokes out. You know, and then the third week onwards, you can start doing hatching. Get the consistency in your strokes. So that's how I start. Okay, I know in the beginning, right, like I probably went through the same thing like you do. A lot of people always worry when I'm sketching, right, if I don't do it properly, right, and I draw directly using the pen, what if I screw up? Okay, I have to believe in it. One, to help you kickstart, it's okay to use a pencil to help you draw, you know, rough shapes before you start inking them. You know, you can be drawing something before you actually ink them. Don't worry too much about, you know, how to get over reliant on the pencil. For a start, I think anybody can do that if it's to help you kick off, because you don't want to kill your enthusiasm and your confidence from the start. So as your strokes get more mature over time, you will start realizing that actually you can do away without the pencil sketching, because right now you have a lot more confidence in your strokes already. It will come naturally, so don't worry. So the moment you sketch every day, you can see from day one to the end of, let's say, the next 30 days, you will see a marked difference in your strokes itself. Okay? So always start with something simple or something that you like. For what I do, I usually keep what I call a jive book. Okay, a jive book is how I started. Very small A6 booklet. You know, you can buy from all the art store produced by Dallin Roney or some of the other famous paper makers, right? They are easy, thin, soft cover. Paper quality is good. So what I do is I make really small sketches or everyday ideas that I put inside. You know, this is to help you get going, so that you don't lose some of your ideas along the way and things like that. So all these are small enough that you can finish in half an hour, or even sometimes I can finish as fast as less than 10 minutes if it's just purely ink, black and white. And then later on, you have the option that you want to add color pencil or any other color medias on it. You can do it. Yeah. So when you first begin, right, always give yourself opportunity to try to record, to draw, rather than to put off by saying that, oh, I need to draw on a proper file or a proper sketchbook. Then you will sometimes kill the interest to even want to start going. So even if you have mistakes, make do with the mistakes, you know, just go on with the mistakes and things like that. Keep what we call a jive book. record all your ideas, to record some of the things you see interesting, while you're waiting for your spouse or something in the cafe or in the car, because it's small enough that you can just pull out from your bag or your pocket, to just do some sketches or something on it. Okay, so this is how I got started. Yeah, and then the next thing is I'm just being lucky because I'm a trained building professional. So last time, long ago, like 30 years ago in school, we did get some lessons about perspective. So today I'm just going to share a little bit about perspective later. Okay, so back to paper again. I always recommend try, if budget and resources is available, get the best paper that you can get. Okay, there's a few things you need to know about paper. First, thickness of the paper. Okay, invest in good paper. If you just want to use 120 gram paper, which is your normal A4 paper that you use in the office or in school, invest in good quality paper. Okay, some of those corporate paper that people use in their magazines or the corporate profile that they print, things like Conqueror paper, they are all very good quality. When you draw anything using your ink or your fountain pen, it won't bleed. So that's the kind of quality that you will ensure that you have a more enjoyable experience when you're drawing with fountain pens and some of the ink medias. Okay, I know there's a temptation to always say that I just go to a popular bookshop and get a cheap notebook. Okay, there's also good cheap notebooks, but make sure you get the right one that doesn't bleed. This particular one that I'm using here, I think it's from A-Zone. It costs like $1.95. Surprisingly, the paper is very good. I have drawn on the whole book using fountain pen and watercolor, and it can take all these punishments quite well. So this is another one perhaps you can consider. But at the end of the day, as you get more serious into the thing, I believe everybody treasure their creation. So it may be good to invest in.
You can show just now the book.
It's you can get from popular bookshop, A-Zone.
A-Zone.
Yeah, they actually have very interesting. This notebook, right, has got 64-page A5, and I believe there are 4 different color paper that you can choose from. They have white, black paper. They have bright yellow, blue, and pink. So take your pick, whatever suits you well. Okay. Of course, like I say, when you get more serious, it's worthwhile to invest in proper paper, particularly if your ink sketching later on will become the foundation of a watercolor washed sketch. Okay, what I meant by watercolor washed sketch. Okay, take an example. When I first drew, let's say this page, all the images was just black and white. They were just done using inking. So imagine you won't know when you're going to produce a masterpiece, right? So if your paper is not able to take watercolor wash later on, right, then when you apply watercolor on it, right, it may just ruin your whole masterpiece. And in fact, rather than able to get a proper masterpiece done, even ruin your ink sketching, then it's like you just wasted your time destroying your whole work from the start. Yeah. So in this sense, I'll recommend when you want to go on serious paintings at some point of time, invest in proper paper. Okay, if you are intending to use watercolor wash onto your ink sketch as a base, my suggestion is minimum go for at least 160 gram and above paper. If budget allows, go for 100% cotton. I know there's a tendency people will stinge. They say, "Oh, I want to try a cheaper paper first." Fine, the cellulose pulps one are fine, but I can assure you, the kind of satisfaction and the kind of workability while you're doing painting is very different from a cheaper brand to a more proper brand that is backed by the quality that they have been producing over the years. So people like Delleroni, people like Fabiano, or even the top class artists, the paper don't usually fail you. But if you try some other unknown brands or lesser known brand, then it's a risk that you sometimes will have to take. Yeah. So I always mention, if there's actually a budget, it's not a big problem. Try to get the best paper that you can afford. Okay. For myself, right, I'm even anal to the point that, you know, I started making my own sketchbook using the paper I like. I'm just going to showcase some of the sketchbook that I've done. Okay, so this is a sketchbook that in fact, I've been doing quite a fair bit of customized sketchbook for sketches worldwide. So they can be used on ink, like what you saw here. Okay, this is made using Archer's watercolor paper, 300 grams heavyweight watercolor paper. So you can see that when I applied watercolor to all the ink sketches, right, this paper can take all the punishment that you're going to impose on them. Yeah, and even if you don't put watercolor on it and let it keep it as a ink sketch base, right? This paper is archival. So basically, it is able to last you for a long time without fading. And the good thing about some of the thicker paper is you can afford to use both sides. The ink or the watercolor doesn't seep through to the other side. So in this sense, I will really encourage at some point to invest in good sketchbooks, because this will serve you very well as you embark on this hobby itself. And you never know, you know, this hobby may become something serious. And you know, Singapore Sketches is going to organize an exhibition in June. Am I spoiling the fun by telling this in advance, Vtec?
No, you can start marketing it. Yes, please.
Yeah, so we are actually now actively looking at some of participants to be able to contribute their pieces for our upcoming exhibition that's coming up in June. So I really urge people that now maybe it's perhaps a good time to start drawing your works, sketching your works on proper paper, so that, you know, perhaps this can become an exhibit later on in our members exhibition in June. Okay. Yep. Okay, so that covers the sketchbook, the paper part, and the pen. I've done it. Okay, now I'm going to bring us back a little bit back to the School of Architecture. Okay, I'm going to show you a play chip method. Okay, now I'm going to start a little bit on perspective. Okay, example. I'm just going to get a ruler. Okay, this one is just for show. I don't usually use ruler when I'm drawing. Okay, usually this line that you draw on a paper is what we term as a horizon. Horizon is where you want to put your eyes. Okay, horizon will change when you are standing up, squatting down, or you are standing on a higher platform looking down or something. So this is, in short, horizon means the level that your eyes are seeing the scenery or the composition itself. So what is meant by perspective? Okay, because of the way we see things, our eyes actually correct what we see and make everything straight. But actually, in reality, right, they are not. Okay, perspective is to put all those what you see in buildings, right, all the distorted lines into a more what we call the correct proportion and the correct direction. Okay, so I'm just going to give a little bit of play chip method of how you can do perspective. Okay, there are a few ways of doing perspective. I'll just go through some very simple ones. Okay, example. Okay, the most simple one is the 1 point perspective. So 1 point perspective is like you decide this is your vanishing point. Okay, this is your horizon. Okay, everything radiates out from there. Okay, you know. So imagine this is a road. You know, so all your buildings will come out from this way. Okay, you know, everything you draw will comes out and radiate from this way as it moves towards this, what we call the vanishing point. Okay, this is a 1 point perspective. That means every point converges to that same 1 point. So this is called the 1 point perspective. Okay, this is in my opinion the simplest and probably not so exciting perspective itself. Yeah. Then the other way to do it is what we call the 2 point perspective. Okay, I'm using a rough paper to just showcase, so to mind all the headers and everything. Okay, 2 points perspective is what I like best. Okay, it showcases a building, particularly like it's in a corner. So usually you see buildings having corners like that, right? So where they go towards this direction. So if let's say this is your horizon line, okay, at some far end, okay, everything will actually converge to this point. Okay, so when you draw all your vertical lines for all your buildings, they will conform to this perspective itself. Okay, this is a more pleasing perspective than to have a single point perspective, because a single point perspective is like very frontal, whereas a 2 point perspective or even a 3 point or multiple point perspective give you a lot more dimension and direction in your sketch itself. Okay, later I'm just going to do a quick cheat sheet way of how you can understand perspective itself. Okay, I think when in the past I did some workshop before, some of the teething question beginners have is, my lines always screw up. My building looks like they are collapsing, they are skewed, or they are like distorted. Okay, I say that's because for a start, right, they didn't quite understand how to get perspective right. So today I'm going to just show you a simple method how to understand perspective, particularly a two point perspective. Okay, like I mentioned just now, this line is your horizon. Okay, so I'm just putting two thumbtack here. Yeah, just give me a minute. Hammer it in to make sure it's straight. Okay, you just take a rubber band, put it there. Okay, this actually represents your horizon. Okay, so now you want to start drawing, right? Very simple. Imagine, right, your perspective. Okay, you draw a, let's say you want to, okay, you decided that your building is going to have this vertical here. Okay, everything will radiate from this point. Okay, because you're trying to draw a building that is in this direction. So very simple. Imagine you take your pencil and you mark this. Okay, and you mark this on this line. Okay, and you just mark all your way. Okay, you pull it down. Yeah, as long as you are here. Okay, so along the way, as you draw any line, as long as it bisects, right, this is the correct perspective, because it will actually lead you to your vanishing point. Okay, so same thing, when you're here, you wanted the perspective here or here. Okay, so keep it to the vertical point. So any line above here will bring you to the intersection point that you want. Okay, same thing, bring here. So along the way, as long as you draw a vertical line, this is how you're going to get your perspective correct. So when you join them up, this gives you the nice perspective that will never go wrong. Okay, so imagine this is if you have this string with the two thumbtack here that helps you get it. But once you are used to having this imaginary elastic band here that help you, perspective comes very, very easy. Well, any questions so far?
What if your vanishing point is beyond your paper?
Aha. That's a good question. So you need to put in a bit of imagination, or if not means you always have to draw on a very big paper, then you do it. Okay, when I show this so-called play chip method, it's not that every time you draw a drawing, you set this up. This is to help you understand perspective. I mean, eventually, right? Maybe for first 1-2 time, you want to just get a hang of perspective by using this method as a gesture. But subsequently, once you are confident, or you should be imagining the rubber band is there, but actually don't need to physically set it up. Because I mean, you may not be in a place whereby you are convenient to have thumbtacks and all the thing. And anyway, by hammering 2 thumbtack into the paper, you actually just make 2 puncture already, which I don't think is something that you want on your masterpiece. So this is seriously only for illustration that I wanted to help you all kickstart on understanding perspective itself. I don't want to go into 3-point and multiple point and even the curvilinear perspective, because that one is a little bit more complicated. For a start, not to get yourself intimidated, I think 1-point and 2-point perspective is able to give you a lot of creativity at this point of time already. Okay, I also have a book that I want to recommend. This book is by far the best book I have read about perspective. Very easy to read. They have some very good illustration and also some practice pieces behind. Is How to See It, How to Draw It, the Perspective Workbook by Matthew Brem. Okay, this is a very, very good book on perspective. Suggest if anybody is interested, you could either buy from online Amazon or Book Depository or something. I got mine from Blackwell. They have free shipping to Singapore. So yeah, this is one of the best books I see in the market, teaching you about perspective. Yeah, or you can get from the library. I know library has limited copies. So yeah. Okay. Just now, somebody also asked me about ink. Okay. So imagine today, right? Every time you finish your ink in your consumable one-time use pen, either you go and buy a refill or you have to buy a new pen. And some of the challenges of some of the pigment pen was that they come with something like a fiber head. So for somebody who has a very heavy tip when you're drawing, you tend to damage the head over time. So sometimes even before your ink is finished, right, you have already damaged the head. So the perishability of your pen is very high. So that kind of situation, you may want to strongly consider using fountain pen itself. Okay, I'm just going to remove the thumbtack so that I can just use the place to do a demo of this. Okay. So, sorry, just now I actually forgot to cover one aspect, because when I was turning my head and look at my side table, I suddenly saw one whole bush of things there that I forgot to showcase. Okay. I forgot about ink. Okay, maybe easier for people to see. Okay, for those of you who are using fountain pen, okay, for sketches, right, the fountain pen ink that we usually buy are typically called document ink, permanent ink, or iron gall ink. Okay, these are the 3 types of ink. What does it mean? It means they are permanent. So once you sketch on your paper, they dry up, right? They will not be able to fade away, or they will not, when you drip water or use a brush on them, right, they will not smudge or they will not dissolve away. So this is the kind of permanent ink that you should be getting in the market. Okay, just a few words of caution. A lot of permanent inks are what we call iron gall ink, or typically, right, iron gall ink has got, I don't know what compound they put inside or ingredients, typically they corrode metals. So I would recommend, right, try not to buy any iron gore ink if you're trying to put those ink into some of your expensive fountain pens. Okay, I've heard of people whose Mont Blanc got damaged when they use all the iron gore ink. Okay, then you say, why do they create such kind of ink? Because way back in the last century or so, right, where ink technology is not so advanced like today, iron gore ink is actually used for signing legal documents. And last time they used to sign using what we call calligraphy pens. Okay, so these are calligraphy pens, where it's dip pen. Okay, yeah, a dip pen itself will look like that. So a lot of Japanese manga comics artists uses the dip pens. Okay, this is a dip pen. Sorry, I think this is for a separate pen nib. But you all understand what I meant. Basically, this is supposed to fit. This is the wrong body for the nib. So after that, right, you dip into the ink itself after you open it, and then you draw or you sign. So the reservoir in front is able to let you store a little bit of ink onto it. But you imagine the process that every few strokes you have to dip again. Every few strokes you probably got to dip. Personally, I feel that it's a hassle. And sometimes you draw your line halfway, you run out of ink. Then when you try to dip and write back again, right, the line just doesn't look crisp and sharp. Okay, so this is not my fancy lah, frankly speaking. I think a fountain pen give me a lot more utilities than some of these dip pen. But there are people who excel in this style of pen, or if you have enough patience to want to keep dipping and drawing. Yeah, I'm just amazed some of the Japanese artists why they can draw comics using a dip pen itself. Yeah. So back to fountain pens. Fountain pens are easy to carry around. Typically, fountain pens, they have a nib in front, and then they have a reservoir in front. I think in the good old days, right, they used that kind of rubber pump behind, you know. But nowadays, I think everything has went into becoming a screw kind of reservoir that sucks the ink up when you use it. Typically, a lot of people can't finish the ink in a week if you don't draw a lot. So it's not expensive, you know. A bottle like that of ink, which is about 35 ml, costs you about $20 to $25 for the more economic range. And of course, you have your Mont Blancs, you know, which will like this bottle cost me almost $80. Yeah, but it actually at the end I'll ask myself, there's not much of a difference I can tell between the two ink. So do I need to spend $80 when a $20 bottle give me the same utilities like a Mont Blanc? But I think it's vanity at some point, all the people want to try out the Mont Blanc ink. So that's why I still have a few bottles of the Mont Blanc ink. They're very smooth. And Mont Blanc guarantee you that if you use their ink, it won't damage your pens. So they stand by the quality that they're selling you. Okay. Many different manufacturers in the market that do permanent ink. Sometimes they are called document ink, or they are called archival ink or permanent ink. All three are interchangeable. Okay. Personally, myself, I think I have tried most of the permanent ink in the market. My favorite is still this brand called the Atramantis. Okay. The Atramantis you probably can get easily from art shop like the one in Cathay. What is it called again?
Overjoy.
Overjoy. Yes, Overjoy has a good collection of the Atramantis ink, especially the document ink. For the Atramantis, there's only about 8 different colors. Okay. And I can tell you, Overjoy always run out of the blacks and the grays. because typically when they restock, right, all the sketchers will go down and take it up first. So they sell out very fast. Once you can find them, better grab first. Okay. I use typically the most frequent I use is the black color one. I also have a favorite called the urban gray. Okay, urban gray is interesting. After it dries, right, it looks like a pencil. So sometimes I use that in my sketches, if particularly I'm trying to apply a watercolor wash to it, so that if I don't want the lines to stand out too much and I wanted it to blend in with the watercolor, the urban gray is actually a very good option. Okay, I saw in the comments page somebody mentioned about R&K, Roking and Kingler, another German brand, also very reputable brand. Okay, personally, I have used it before, but it clogged up some of my fountain pen before. So, whereas I have good experience so far with the Atramentis, so I have actually moved away from R&K and actually use the Atramentis. The other brand I like a lot is Diamite. Diamite, I think, is a UK ink producer. They have more than a century's experience in producing. They have also very good document inks as well. So this is something you may want to consider. You can get them from Overjoy, you can get them from Fokhin, or you can get them online from City Lux as well. However, I must say that, frankly speaking, when there's document ink, right, they always have very limited color range. You know, it's unlike your normal, you know, those washable fountain pen ink where they have tons of color you can choose from. Document ink usually is very dull colors. Why? Because the objective of producing document ink is for signing legal documents. So typically they will have black, they will have blue, dark blue or light blue. They will have red, they will have brown. Yeah, so these are the staple colors. But I think in the last few years, people have got a little bit more adventurous. They have things like orange, they have what you call purple, violet, or whatever you call it, that is being made into permanent ink. I did try the Atramentis purple, but I just thought it's a little bit too dark to my liking though. Yep, so there's so much of ink. Yeah, usually if you are traveling, right, I'll recommend not to bring the whole bottle of ink, you know. So what I usually do is I actually put them on small, these are like your blood test, what do you call it? Small sample bottles. Yeah, you can get them from some of the pharmacies or those medical supply shops. They're not expensive. So they can contain about 10 ml in one bottle. So you can, it's tight enough. You can bring up the flight if you're traveling overseas, or you can bring it around so that you don't have to lug the whole glass bottle around. Yeah. So this cute little thing was made by my son, who saw that I every time have no place to put all this when they're on the table. So they use some clays to make a stand for me so that I can use it as a dip pen reservoir as well. Okay. So, okay. So like I mentioned just now, I'm just going to do, how much time I have left? I only got 10 minutes left. So basically, right, let's say example, now I'm just going to draw this. I'm just going to show you some of the ways to help you maintain a long line. Okay, typically, right, for beginners, the biggest challenge is always to draw a straight line. Okay, then there are people who like to draw like that for some reason. Try not to do that, because when you did it overall, your whole building looked very fuzzy, like it's very heavy kind of feeling. If you are not able to do a continuous line, what I suggest is start with dots. You know, you put dots so that your eyes is trained to know where to start and where to end. Okay, say for example, you want to start from this point to this point, and you may not be conversant enough to be able to use the fulcrum of your elbow or your wrist, and you're worried that halfway through you will stop. Okay, let me show you how. Okay, you draw. If you need to stop, Then don't try to hit the same point and draw again. Leave a gap and then draw. You know, it looks better than if you try to do this. You stop there and then you try to do it. This king here will look very weird. Okay, so what people do is sometimes they just stop and then they just pull it through. Same for verticals. Stop if you need to. Yeah, it's sometimes acceptable to have a little bit of you know, exceed your point. It doesn't matter. Don't forget, urban sketching is a little bit rough. We are not trying to do precision drawing. In fact, you know, I will recommend keeping a little bit of not so straight line in your drawing because it look more real. Because if you want to do so fine precision drawing, you should have used it. You should have used a ruler in the first place. You shouldn't be using freehand. But I always felt that, you know, keeping the line relatively straight with some mistakes shows that it is done by a human. It's not done by tools like ruler or the machine print it out for you. So this increase actually the credibility of the picture, showcasing like you really draw it by hand. It's not drawn by machine or drawn using tools. Okay, so yep. Okay, there's also a few things I want to just quickly, since I only got barely 10 minutes left. When you are doing, let's say, windows, okay, must know a little bit about windows. You know, when building contractors, right, they build windows and doors, right? There's definitely a window frame or a door frame, okay? You never have the window fully going out. It's always a recess, okay? So this is understanding a bit of the technology of a window itself. So this is the door frame. And underneath the door frame, this part is always dark, right? Because this is the part that doesn't catch light. So you can actually shade it in such a way that this is in shadow. And then next thing is to draw the window itself. So most of them, let's say you have a central window. And a part of the window is usually concealed inside the door frame, because if you are looking from an oblique angle, yeah. And then the darkest point is always, if your light is coming this direction, the inside is always the darkest here. So you must make sure that your darkest point is always at this corner. Yeah. Okay. Don't draw tables. Don't draw doors this way. You know. You know, I have people who draw it this way. It doesn't look 3D. It doesn't stand out because we're very used to whenever there's a door, right? There must be a door frame. So by adding a simple door frame and just increasing the intensity of the line inside without having any shadow, it's already helping you to tell people that the door is recessed inside. So this is something to take note of. Yeah. And like I take example, when I draw here, this building itself, right? Let's say you have a door here, you know. A lot of people always draw their door flush with the building wall. We know that's not very possible because based on building technology, it is never like that. So it is worthwhile to actually do a recess in, you know, before you draw the door itself. So this is the part that you can shade in darkness. And then this part is actually like a curve. Yeah. Most people in normal buildings, right, there will be something protruding out. So this helps people to know that this is actually a door that's leading inwards. And it's actually at the edge of the building itself. So same for windows. Okay. Let's say you draw a window. Draw a recess in, and then you draw the and it's always the darkest point underneath the porch itself. So this is the part you can actually put in your shadows itself. And then if the sun is coming from this direction, there's always some shadows below the windowsill itself. So same thing for the door. Yeah. Usually if the sun is strong in the afternoon sun, you will at least have at least 1/3 of the door in shadows itself. So this will help bring up the 3D, the 3D of your door itself. So this is just to take note when you're drawing building itself. Okay, I think I run out of time. So I shall keep the last 5 minutes for any question that anybody may have. Yeah. Well, is there any question? Do you help me?
Maybe I'll give you a question, Jeff.
Yeah.
When you go to a site anywhere, when you sit down, right? Tell us what is your process of designing your sketch, right? I mean, you go to a new place and you want to sketch something. What do you do? What goes through your head?
Okay. When I first long ago started out when I was still an architecture student, right? What I like to do is I like to make mini thumbnails. Okay, so you take out a rough piece of paper, you just draw simple thumbnails. You know, maybe you go there. You know, you may want to go around that building that you're trying to sketch and look at it from different perspectives. Even squat down, or sometimes you may have to go up to a higher floor and look down to see which one is better. Right. So then the next thing you got to ask yourself whether you want to do a 2-point perspective, you know, where they have a roof or something like that, right? Where you just do simple, very sketchy kind of thing so that it helps you perceive it. And then if you don't like this angle, if you were to see in a vertical angle, right? Like this, like which one is better? Yeah, something like that. So then you decide, you know, do a small sketch to see what you like best, you know, draw very big sketches, you know. And then once you agree on it, then you start. First thing you got to decide where's your vanishing point. So if you decided to go on a two-point perspective, right, you will have 2 vanishing points, like in this case, you know. So all your lines will converge and all come out from these 2 points. So if this is a single point perspective, right, your vanishing point is probably somewhere here, and everything is radiating out of this line itself. So once you determine where's your vanishing point and your horizon, then all the other things will fall in place once you have imaginary lines radiating out from it. So usually that's how I do my initial composition or the idea behind the sketch that I want to do. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thanks. I think it's nice to know your process. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
There's a question on any suggestion for white pens?
White pen. Okay. Frankly speaking, it's quite hard to find good white highlighter pen in the market. But I think in the urban sketching circle, right, this is one of those that a lot of us use, the Uniball one. It has a few diameter. This is the broad one. There's a finer one. I also use the Sakura's gel pen. But I think depend on what you like. The Signal one, because it has a broad point. So it doesn't get clawed up if you are drawing over watercolor. Sakura one, right, because it's finer tip. So if you draw over watercolor, sometimes the watercolor gets caught up in the ball bearing in front, and then your whole pen doesn't roll very smoothly. Yeah, so this is the one I currently use. I also have another Sakura one. Because my habit, I draw a lot of details in my sketches. So sometimes the broad one is a little bit too broad. So I will fall back on the smaller nib size one with the Sakura gel pen. Yeah. Then again, like I mentioned, if you think that this thing is too harsh, sometimes white ink can be very harsh on, let's say, imagine you did the whole place. I forgot to mention. So this was the pen that has a brush. I used it for a few days. Yeah, sorry. So if you look, this one, right, is literally like a brush. Okay. So what sometimes I do, you can get this kind of effect. This is for, okay, this one has a little even advantage. If you have one of those brush that has ink that has water in it, right, you can actually dilute it. It actually gives you some very nice grace. That's way before your ink dries up. Yeah, see that? So this is a little bit like your shading. If you are keeping all all your things in black and white, this will be a good tool to have, where you can actually draw your sketches in a thicker line. Okay, more variants. This is a little bit like what some of us is using in terms of the Fude nibs. Fude nibs are fountain pen that has a hook nib in front. Because of the hook nib, you can actually produce different variation of lines in your drawing. But frankly speaking, I actually like the brush pen better because it's softer. Depending on how you press down, the amount of strength you do, I feel that the line is a little bit more wow than the Fude nib itself. But that's personally me. Yeah. The other thing that I also mentioned in my pen case is this water-soluble graphite. Okay, so when you are using it, right, it's like a pencil. You know, your sketching pencil. You can do all your shading like a normal pencil. But because sometimes when you don't want to introduce so much lines into your drawing, right, you want to soften it. Very simple. You just take the same pen again with the water. It actually dissolves it. So it's actually softening the effect. Yeah. So sometimes I play cheat, I just dissolve a bit of the graphite in front, and then these are some of the shortcuts that some of us use. So this is something useful also. So you can actually use it like a pencil, but at the same time, if you need to dissolve it to give you a bit of shading, yeah, then this is helpful.
Okay, there's a question. Is there your go-to hatching method for your pen works?
Okay, I think I have progressed to a point. I don't do pencil outlines anymore. That means nowadays for speed, sometimes I already got very limited time. Within 10 minutes I need to finish and go. I would do straight away in ink. Fountain pen is usually the fastest and the most convenient because it's easy to carry around with a small notebook itself. Yeah, I can show you what are some of those sketches that has been done in 10 minutes. Yeah. So the inking of all this is done in 10 minutes. The color I came back and do. Yeah. So all these are done in 10 minutes because this was during my lunch last time when I was working near Amoy Street. Yeah. So instead of having lunch, I went out sketching. Yeah. So these are doing some of the urban sketching.
Then hatching, the cross hatching, the hatching, shading.
Yes, all this is 12 minutes. Within 12 minutes, I actually set time. So you got to work very, very fast. So your hands must be very confident where you place them. Yeah, you frankly speaking, this is also a good way to test yourself on your line works itself. But of course, I also have make mistakes. Sometimes you got to do some things to cover over mistakes, which along the way, as you get more practice, right, you will roughly know. But I always tend to not want to use ruler. I like to keep my lines a little bit, if it's not straight, because it tells people this is drawn by a human. It's not drawn by a machine or something by tools.
Yeah, Chef, I don't think you're answering the question. The question is in the shadow part, right? You stop and look at one of these sketch, right? If you look at the shadow part, I guess his question is, how do you hatch the shadow? He wants to know how you hatch the shadow.
Okay, I'll come to that. Okay, shadow, right? There's a few ways to do shadow. Okay, it depends on how clean you want to keep your, say for example, if your pictures are all very sketchy type, you may want to have single directional shadows. Okay, but if your picture has a lot of very straight lines already, and you try to use straight line to cover over straight line, it gets very messy. That's the point of time you can either do what we call right angles hatching to give more variation, or you may want to even do what we call incline sketching. Okay, but incline sketching is employed in my opinion when you want to have the darkest shadow. Okay, why we need darker shadow? It's like if you all know a little bit about photography, right? Your highlight can only be brought out by the darkest black. So in this case, right, example, if this is the areas that you want really white, right, you want to draw people's attention to the highlight there, then this highlight must be beside the darkest black. When it's beside the darkest black, right, the only way you can get the darkest black is by cross hatching. So I will advocate, if you want to highlight, say for example, you want to highlight your area of your door frame, which is usually is in the sun, right? So you may have accidentally, let's say, hatched into the door frame. So how do you save it? Use the white highlighter. When you use the white highlighter, you bring back the highlight back into the area where you want it to be white again. I think can't see properly. So if you were to expand, right, you see? So when you bring the white back in, this also helps to salvage those areas that you over darken as well. Does that help?
Yep, he said yep.
Okay. So there's no hard and fast rule. Along the way, different people will develop different style of hatching even, or sometimes I even use a combination of the soluble graphite with watercolors, or even the ink wash that are usually used. But the danger about shading is that don't overdo it. If not, your whole painting will lose a lot of details. You want it to be subtle, but telling people that there's depth inside your drawing itself. Yeah. Okay. So like this particular piece, I use a lot of the ink brush to shade out all the shadows itself. Okay, the ink brush, when you use it for shadow, is the good thing is you can actually make use of the brush strokes to create a lot more shapes and forms of your shadow. Because hatching, right, there's a limitation. No matter how, they are still lines. Whereas a brush itself gives you a little bit more. You can vary, you can have a dry brush technique by gently glazing over the paper, so that it gives you a little bit of like dry brush techniques effect. Yeah. And then if you need it darker, you just go over the ink one more time. Yeah. So like this particular picture, I combine with both fountain pen and also the brush, because the foliage and the vegetation here, when you use a brush, they look better. Yeah. Same for this one. Yeah. Okay. So yeah.
There's one question from Susan. Do you feel over the years with so many sketching, your hatching gets faster?
I wouldn't say faster. I only say it comes more intuitively. Okay, there's a reference that I may want to just point out if anybody is really interested in hatching. There's this guy called Afonso Dunn, D-U-N-N, a UK sketcher. He got very good YouTube channels. Go and take a look. This guy is an amazing line artist. He do a lot of education programs. He do a lot of YouTube instruction tutorials. Go and have a look. And he's one of those that I really impressed, because he actually used a deep pen. He used a deep pen to actually draw a lot of his sketches. Yeah.
Is it this one?
Let me see.
Alfonso do.
Yeah, it's him. It's him.
Yeah, that's him. Yes. He also has quite a few books. Y'all can get it from Basha, or the National Library also has a lot of books. I own some of his books. Yeah, this guy is an amazing guy. When I first started coming back to sketching, I read and see a lot of his videos. Yeah.
Okay, any more questions?
Yep.
We end the class.
Okay. If not, thank you all for your time. I hope it's useful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jeff, for sharing your knowledge, right? Yeah. So Belle, you want to talk about the next class? Maybe just very quickly do a quick marketing of the next one.
Okay, the next class will be on the 9th of March, same Wednesday, 8 to 9 p.m. Will be done by Raymond, teaching us how to do faceless sketching of in gesture. Okay, you look out for our events. We will send out once we have the details. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.